Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakio, and the title of today's talk is The Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, Part 1. This will be the first in a four-part series on the core tenets of Buddhist practice and how they can help us in everyday life. But before we get into that, I'd like to remind you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, if you'd like to do a deep dive into the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path of Buddhism, I'd encourage you to check out my book, Perfectly Ordinary, Buddhist Teachings for Everyday Life. I've placed a link to a sample chapter of the book in the description for this talk. So, the Four Noble Truths represent the core tenets of Buddhist practice. And if you understand them, you understand all of Buddhism, because everything else comes from these Four Noble Truths. The first of which states life is suffering. The second states suffering is caused by desire. The third, the way to end suffering is to end desire. And the fourth, the way to end desire is the Noble Eightfold Path. And today we'll be talking about the first of these Four Noble Truths. Now, I should stop and say that we shouldn't get scared or pull back when we hear the words life is suffering. The original word in the Sanskrit was dukkha, which more literally translates to hard to carry or difficult to bear. So another way to think of the first noble truth of Buddhism is life is difficult to bear. You can imagine it like a heavy backpack we have to carry. Of course, this doesn't mean that we don't enjoy things or see beautiful things as we're carrying our backpack, but it also doesn't alleviate the fact that there's a lot of weight on our back. And this is our experience in everyday life. There are challenges. There are things we have to deal with. Some of them are more difficult than others. So suffering may be a child who forgets to take out the garbage, or suffering may be the death of a loved one. And part of our practice as Buddhists, and also frankly just as human beings, is learning how to deal with these challenges successfully. And the first way to deal with them is just to accept that they're part of life, that they're inescapable in many ways, that we can do everything right and still have things go wrong. For example, I had a good friend of mine a while back. We were speaking and he was explaining how his son had recently left for college. And his son had forgotten to pack his dress clothes for a tour that he had to do while he was there at school. So he needed his father to send him his stuff, dress pants, dress shoes, etc. And his dad was upset because he expected his 18-year-old son to be more responsible. So he's kind of going on ranting a little bit of, I have to find a box, and I have to get his clothes and figure out which ones fit and which don't. Then I have to go to the post office and mail them. And, it's just a huge inconvenience. But then after he did all of this and said all of this, he just kind of sighed and said, but you know what? That's just part of it. And then we talked about something else, and it was fine. And I think that is such an incredibly mature and beautiful way to approach suffering. It's just part of life. It's just something we have to deal with. We have to pay bills. We have to go to work. We have to clean up the messes of our children occasionally. We have to deal with cats who try to destroy our plants. That's part of being alive. And I think in the West, a big reason why we suffer so much is because we think we shouldn't suffer. Because we think everything should be perfect. I paid good money for this, therefore it should always be right. Well, life has other ideas, right? So when Buddha says life is suffering, he uses the same tone of voice that a weatherman might use to say, it's cold outside. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just the situation. So it's on us to take that situation, see it for what it is, it's cold outside, and then dress accordingly so that we can be warm. And if we do that, we can actually enjoy being outdoors, even though it's 20 degrees with 3 feet of snow. Similarly, with our suffering, if we simply accept it as part of life and then act accordingly, work with our suffering skillfully, then we can enjoy it. We can laugh at it. We can see the beauty in the chaos and the mess that is our life. And we can live peacefully. Just because life is suffering, that doesn't mean we have to suffer. So that's the talk for today. I hope it was helpful. If you'd like to read articles I've written about Buddhist practice, you can do that at my blog, The Same Old Zen, which is at thesameoldzen.com. If you have follow-up questions on today's Dharma talk, you can email me at sameoldzen@gmail.com or post a comment in the comment section below. I love chatting with you guys, and I promise I'll respond. But that's it for today. Until next time, Amitabha.